Welcome back to The Watch and House of the Dragon, episode 8, the finale of the season. And what was that? Come on! That's how they're going to end it? Really? Really? Oh my gosh! Okay, so, look, there's still a lot I liked in this episode. It ended on a sour note. There was a lot of setup with no payoff, okay? And we're expecting something big, something a bit more of a spectacle, which we don't get. We get basically a tease, which is seemingly going to be given and paid off in now season 3. And, that's annoying. That is annoying. And look, I'm disappointed. And I can really see that a lot of other people, probably be even more disappointed than me. I have been, I think, fairly charitable to the show. There's been a lot of kind of slow build, and some of those slower episodes were paid off, especially with the Battle of Rook's Rest, right? And so that kind of was giving me false confidence that they would have a good payoff to the build that we were getting in these last 3 to 4 episodes, right? And I thought building to this final episode, which we don't get. So that is frustrating. It ended on a cliffhanger, and you're just thinking, really? Really? And not only that, there is a moment in this episode which has probably got the most criticism that I could give any scene in the entire season. There's still many things I liked, and if you were to cut that and had a better ending, this could have been best episode. But because the ending is, and it didn't even need to be a huge spectacle, but something really biting and significant, like how season 1 ended, right? Wasn't a massive spectacle in terms of a huge battle, but it ended on something really significant happened, and you were just like, oh, dang, right? We don't get that. In fact, we get one of the more bafflingly written, contradictory kind of scenes in this season, which is a scene between Alicent and Rhaenyra. And the characters just seem out of place. The writing seems to be playing defense for Rhaenyra in a disingenuous way that doesn't seem authentic to the events that we have seen transpire. I'll talk about more specifics as I get to the more spoiler section. But because of that, this episode actually has the most criticism I would give to any other episode in season 2, which that makes this the worst episode of season 2. And this is the final episode of season 2, and that's how they're going to end off on it. That is really disappointing for a really good, enjoyable show. And I'm left wondering why. The bad scene that I'll criticize between Alicent and Rhaenyra just shouldn't have been done. Better writing could have solved that completely. It felt like it was forced, that the writers wanted this moment between these two female characters for them to girl boss to each other and to prop Rhaenyra up and take Alicent down a peg. And that's why I felt forced a bit. It's just like, they desperately wanted to have that. If they were just being honest to the events and the characters, they could have written something much better. And they have the talent to do this. So that's frustrating. Now, as to why it ended on such a cliffhanger, maybe is it budget? They had to cut down the amount of episodes in season 2. Remember, this was filmed during the writer's strike. So that could be some explanation as to why the build-up, the spectacle that you're expecting from the build-up, is now clearly being pushed over to season 3. This is going to be frustrating for a lot of people, doubly so, because at the end of season 1, you're expecting things to get really messy. Like, oh, dang, things are now going to hit the fan and we're going to be seeing some big bloodshed. But the heat of the end of season 1 was kind of quenched with the version of what we got of the Blood and Cheese event, right? Which took the heat out of Rhaenyra's, demand for justice. And that, okay, I was like, I was able to accept that as something that put a pause on the all-out commitment to warfare. Still, at the end of season 1, you're expecting things to get really serious. Now we're kind of at that with the end of season 2, for things to get really serious, with lesser of an emotional impact that we got at the end of season 1. This feels like a softer build-up without nearly as much of the punch. And so the ending of this season, even though we're kind of getting pushed to the same area, has, like the same place as season 1 ended off, right? Has such less of an impact and punch, which is, it's a concern. And I wonder how many people are going to be invested to see season 3 because of the way this ended, when everyone seemed to be invested with the end of season 1. So I'm taking me how season 2 ended and stuff. And I don't know, of course I want to see the conclusion, and that is one of the reasons they chose to do it on cliffhanger, to try and bait people into showing up for season 3. And if season 3 opens with a massive bang, like things have now exploded, right? Yeah, that could, ensure people stay on board. But if, like, episode of season 3, if that's a slow build up again, and the payoff just keeps getting delayed and delayed, it's going to have very diminishing returns. Unfortunately, yeah, this is, to me, the worst episode of the season, and it's the finale. I would give it maybe a 5 out of 10. I was thinking maybe 6 when I was chatting with Nerdrotic on his channel. We do a post episode live stream that I join him now and then on that. And so I'm kind of falling between 5 and 6, sitting more on the 5, and upon reflection, that could go down, it could go up. But that's the lowest rating of any episode so far. Okay, so let's go into some of the spoilers and break down some of the more specifics, some of the things I liked, some of the things I disliked, and we'll get into it. So the episode begins with one of the Lannister twins, the one who was on the council, trying to negotiate with the people of Braavos to get ships. I think too much time was spent on this scene. I wasn't really invested on what's happened. I know it's going to have significant impact, but I think it could have been cut down, nowhere near as much time given to it, because there seems to be this drawn-out thing between him and the admiral or whatever of their ships, that he has to win their favor, and multiple kind of scenes that are devoted to this, ultimately concluding with him having the ships being brought over. I feel it could have been done a lot shorter and more efficient. Look, we'll see if there will be paid, but any type of expectations on it, we'll see how this pays off. It wasn't worth the time given to it. It's going to have to wait, like, a year, 2 years for season 3 to come out to find out about it. And so it does very little for this episode in terms of engagement. What you want in this episode is to see the things that were building up in the season, all right, and the payoffs and the characters and the stories that we're following. This is kind of a new story, which doesn't really go anywhere apart from, they now have ships. And, like I said, less interest in it. There's going to be no payoff for a while, and so I didn't like that they spent so much time with it. There we see that Aemon has reacted to having to flee Dragonstone because they got more dragons, with burning one of their towns or cities called Sharp Point, I think it's called. I had a question, like, if Aemon was willing to lash out and do something, why didn't he then burn the blockade of ships? I already had a question about that in the previous episode. Did I mention it? Oh, it might have been with Nerdrotic in the live stream discussion. And I think, look, maybe you could answer it with the fact that this settlement was just far enough away to be safer, where the blockade is too close to Dragonstone to risk doing that. And if that's the case, a simple line would answer the question for it. So then we see Aegon, right? And this kind of surprised me. I wasn't expecting Larys to do this. Larys comes in with Aegon, who's still recovering, and tells him that he needs to flee because now Rhaenyra has more dragons. And so I wasn't kind of expecting Larys to do that, but it makes sense because he doesn't really have any influence or power with Aemon, and he has sympathy for Aegon, and he has been moving all his money to Braavos. And he feels like this would help protect Aegon's life, which, through the context of the episode, we know this is very much true. In fact, this will save Aegon's life by the events that play out. There is some really good, I guess, character development from Aegon when he is sharing how, low he is feeling. He mentions that his manhood is no longer there and that he has no point to live. But Larys actually kind of gives him a sense of purpose to live. And there's another line that also revealed some of his character where Aegon, he might not have been a truly terrible king. He's been a bit of a dropkick in many instances, but has shown signs of actually being a half-decent king. Being merciful to the petitions that came to him and saying you have to have the small folk on your side. And when he is told that Aemond burnt, is it Shad Point, right? The entire town. He responds is an insane C word or something like that. Showing that he would have more restraint, especially than Aemond, and that killing the innocent people was just insanity, right? So that's an interesting sign about Aegon's, mercy, right? Then he feels like he has no point to live, and Larys gives him kind of purpose that we can return after all the ashes and the things have been destroyed. We can return in strength, and he could be considered the kingdom's delight. And he seems to be won over a little bit by that because Aegon ultimately just wants to feel loved. That's been one of his driving motivations, where he feels like his mother never loved him, and that's not all. Alicent has been a terrible mum, but Aegon has also been an idiot and a jerk growing up, a layabout and a louse and all that, a rapist. Yeah, there might be a reason why people have not liked him, but then when he saw the admiration of being king, that might have actually put him on a bit of a redemptive arc to want to do positive things to make people like him in a positive way. So it was a good scene, that, right? There's a couple of good scenes in this episode. Now, Rhaenyra goes to meet with Corlys, and Corlys says, we have dragons now, we have to strike. And when he said that, I was thinking, it's not in her character to act decisively. And sure enough, her follow-up is no, our greatest strength will be a deterrent. We might avoid war. But Corlys basically says, no, this isn't how it's going to work. We need to strike out, do something decisive, and she kind of agrees with him. Now, the next scene is Daemon, and he has an army now, and is at Harrenhal. And his spirits have risen a bit. And the interesting thing that happens in these scenes with Daemon is that guy, a lord, was dispatched from Rhaenyra to see if he is on his side. But when he arrives, he actually mentions that he is willing to betray Rhaenyra and join Daemon because he thinks the realm needs a king, someone strong to fight the war. And Daemon's response I found interesting. He says, I didn't take you for a turncloak, kind of accusing him of treachery, yet he doesn't call him out completely, so Daemon is still on the fence about it. And we get the conclusion of Daemon's arc in this episode at Harrenhal, with him basically admitting that it isn't his role to be king. His role is to play a part in this story, and Rhaenyra should be queen. And I actually feel this is a good conclusion, a satisfying conclusion with his arc in Harrenhal. Perhaps it did, get stretched out an episode too long, but I genuinely found all the scenes with him at Harrenhal intriguing, interesting, and entertaining, and engaging, right? And the arc he went on, that it revealed so much interesting stuff about his character. He isn't a complete psychopath, Daemon. He is a complex character, right? That does have a sense of guilt for the bad things he's done. And he has some decent motivations, which ultimately culminates with his decision at the end, through this episode, where he re-swears his loyalty to Rhaenyra. Now, it does come after a vision that he has at the weirwood tree, prompted by the witch there. And I got a little confused as to her motivations, because it seems like this episode is saying this is the final goal of her motivation, was to get Daemon to swear loyalty to Rhaenyra. And maybe that's because she has seen the visions and knows that this is how things are supposed to play out, ultimately to put the realm in such a way that will defeat the White Walkers in the future, if that's the case. I'm not sold on it. Look, it isn't explicit that this is the reasons. But it seems to imply that the events need to play out this way to defeat the White Walkers in the future, because Daemon has a bit of a vision sequence, and he sees the destruction of the Targaryen house, the dead dragons, but then he sees the Game of Thrones, some of the events, like, what's her name? Mother of Dragons lady. Her name escapes me. I know it'll come to me again. But you know her. She's one of the main characters, right, of Game of Thrones. He sees her with the dragons. And it's kind of telling Daemon that the Targaryen line will survive and they'll be there to defeat the White Walkers. The odd thing is, right, is like, if the Targaryen house was stronger and they didn't fight a war that killed off all the dragons, that would probably be in a much stronger position to defeat the White Walkers later on anyway. But could it be that events were going to transpire in such a way that if there was not any intervention by people who could see the future, that there would be no dragons at all, and there was no way to survive unless Daemon does swear loyalty to Rhaenyra, which means it sets the timeline in such a path that some dragons will survive through Daenerys. Yeah, look at that. I remember the name, right? Dany, Daenerys. And that's why the witch is been influencing Daemon to see this path and to push him down it. Maybe not. But okay, that could be her ultimate goal, and that's what this episode seems to be trying to say. It seemed a bit more nefarious and self-serving in other reasons, okay? Because she was taking actions that gave Daemon the army, and that was almost encouraging him to take the army and be king himself and take the power for himself. And I was like, was she pushing him that way, or was it just temptation to get him to resist and then become stronger for it? There's a couple of muddy things that perhaps are done purposely ambiguous to have the mystery. But this episode seems to try and conclude it all with that, no, this is her intention. And Daemon takes that, he has a vision, and he realizes that winter is coming, the White Walkers, and he needs to serve Rhaenyra to allow the future to play out as it needs to be. And in terms of Daemon swearing loyalty back to Rhaenyra, that felt like a good arc and good conclusion. Still question marks about the witch, but overall I did find it satisfying, and the episode is going pretty good up to this point where Daemon swears fealty and for a number of other things. And so even if the episode moved forward unchanged for a lot of these good scenes and ended on a stronger note, and the annoying scene was cut or just done better, this could have been so much better. All right? But yeah, Daemon's arc, I liked it. Another great scene is with Cole. Cole explaining kind of where he is at. He is confronted by Alicent's brother. He has figured out, or has known for a while, and takes the final, confirmation with the way that Cole is looking at her favour, which is kind of the cloth or handkerchief that she gave him, right? That he's broken his oaths, and he just admits it. And he shows his nihilistic side, though there's a hint of him that redeems him somewhat as a character, because he shows that he still wants to believe in justice, and he says, seeking justice by the sword that he's holding, that he would want for that. But then he kind of says there's no point because we're all going to die, the dragons are going to destroy everyone anyway. But still, it shows he has that desire in him, even if he doesn't believe in it or has given up on it. He wishes that could be the case. And he is remorse to the fact that everyone is going to die, but it does make his character seem a bit better in terms of what he's done in the past. And so Cole, a lot of the scenes with Cole in this season has been pretty good, and I really like this season as well. Of course, yeah, we covered Daemon bending the knee. And one of the other scenes that are really good is the Lord of Driftmark, Corlys. He has a confrontation with one of his illegitimate sons, and his illegitimate son basically throws the charity back in his face, because Corlys says, I'm trying to help you, and he responds basically like, I needed your help my whole life and you were never there, and now when I can do something for you, right, where you can use me, then you're going to show me help. And it was a really good scene, and it built his character, made him more well-rounded as an individual, made him feel more real, shows some of the deeper conflict that he's had and has dealt with through his life, and there's good payoff there. There's some good payoff with the new Dragon Riders. Ulf, is it? And I forget the name of the blacksmith guy. I like the blacksmith guy. Ulf annoyed me this episode, and I think that's on purpose, okay? Because he's rubbing Jace the wrong way, and he's letting the new power of being a dragon rider get to his head, and he's being boastful about what he can do. I expect that he's just going to get killed, okay? And is going to be a coward or just run away. Jace really dislikes his Ulf, and you understand why. In fact, there's a good scene with Jace, actually, where he really gets stuck into him, and he exerts his authority that is willing to be critical and tell people what for, which is signs of perhaps good leadership in Jace in the future. That it reminded me of the scene in Game of Thrones where Rob, where he goes to one of the other lords sworn to the Stark house, where he's like, call me your boy one more time, you know, where he's proving himself to these people that don't take him seriously. Felt like Jace was kind of going through a bit of that as well, where he was stepping up and showing that he won't be intimidated by people and that he will exert his authority. And so I'm interested to see where they take Jace with all of that. Okay, so there was a lot of good moments in this, and it's all build up though, so I am expecting something interesting and big to happen, even though I'm enjoying it, but we don't get that payoff. And so we'll come to a scene where there's a couple of moments that kind of set this up, where Alicent is trying to tell her daughter that, she thinks she needs to escape with her daughter, that she has no power to change the course of events, and the best thing for her is trying to save her life and her daughter's life. And she sets up a way to flee the city covertly, but what she's really doing is sneaking into Dragonstone. Seems like she got there pretty easily. It felt like Rhaenyra had to go through a bit more difficulty at King's Landing than it was for Alicent to get to Dragonstone. And she said that, you know, her bodyguard, it was the member of the King's Guard, surrendered his sword and brought her in, and that no one else saw her. Well, I'm not sure about that. It's hard, I'm not convinced she could have gotten all the way into Dragonstone, even with the King's Guard trying to announce her secretly, that no one would have seen her. So, but then we come to this scene between Rhaenyra and Alicent, and it's an awful scene. It's really bad. It felt like the writers were desperate to force this confrontation between the two, and they were kind of replaying some of the things that they kind of talk about in their first meeting, but achieving nothing. And in this confrontation, Rhaenyra is completely like entitled and arrogant, but it feels like the writers feel like she's justified, which felt baffling to me. She criticizes Alicent of, being having a lover, and that she's indulging in her lust. Alicent tries to throw it back in her face, but Rhaenyra doesn't show any guilt or remorse for all the actions she's done, and the scene feels constructed in such a way that the show and the writers are kind of on her side. It's playing out like Rhaenyra is more justified in her aggression towards Alicent in the scene, and Alicent is playing the more meek, regretful one who has made no more mistakes. And it felt disingenuous, especially when at one point Rhaenyra says, we'll have a son for a son, and Alicent does not respond by saying, hang on, you ordered the death of, her grandchild. That her child was killed in retribution, but she doesn't mention that at all. I was like, come on. And that's why the scene isn't playing out, it doesn't feel like it's playing out authentically, when there is very much a lot of guilt that Rhaenyra is responsible for, and bad things, right, that Alicent just doesn't even address or acknowledge. So that felt disingenuous. And then Alicent does this thing which just comes off as crazy, right? Where she basically wants to set up a situation where Rhaenyra can take King's Landing and be seen as the one on the throne, and therefore she foolishly thinks that will end the war. And she says that Aemond is going to be leaving with Vhagar to join Sir Cole. That means the King's Landing will be vulnerable in 2 days' time. So if Rhaenyra just shows up, she can take the throne. And I'm thinking, what? Like, no one left in King's Landing will oppose her? Granted, she's got a dragon, right? But Aemond is still around. And even if Rhaenyra showed up with a lot of, like, you know, power, soldiers and stuff to take King's Landing more in force, okay, what are they going to do about the army that's around there? I feels like a really foolish plan. And Alicent, the show explicitly says that to do that, right, Rhaenyra says she has to take Aegon's head, Alicent's son. Alicent, throughout her entire arc, has been protecting her children to a fault, literally to a fault, even when they don't deserve it, right, okay? And suddenly, without really anything to explain why or justify it, she agrees that Rhaenyra can take Aegon's head. And that felt so out of character for her. Just, excuse me, what? Right? Like, it felt totally out of left field. And maybe they could have done something to justify it or set it up better, that she got more dissatisfied with Aegon. But the person that I think she would be more willing to let die would be Aemon, not Aegon. Wouldn't she have more mercy to Aegon with what is in? Maybe Aegon would, like, if they had a scene of him being in such pain that he just wanted to die, that she felt like, you know, this would be a mercy upon him. But not with how they set it up. It felt completely contrary to her character. And remember, to do this, she not only has to basically sacrifice Aegon's life, she'll be sacrificing what? How do you think her father will come out of this? Otto, right? She has another son that's been living with the Hightowers, right? What about Sir Cole? What about the entire army that's still serving Aemon, right? This isn't like a way to save lives. This means she's basically trying to serve up her entire side on a platter that would all need to be wiped out and killed, okay? Because she's not dealing with Aemon, who is the biggest threat and still King Regent, who's still controlling the army. So even if she lets Rhaenyra in, that doesn't really solve anything. It's going to cause huge bloodshed. It seems like a bafflingly dumb plan, hugely contrary to her character. The fact that she's willing to let her son be murdered to achieve it, Aegon. And again, remember, she has protected her children relentlessly, even when they have done horrible things like rape. Like, you know, do you see why I felt forced? And also I needed, because even if she's going to do this, Aegon does leave the city with Larys. They're sneaking out. So Rhaenyra will show up in King's Landing and there won't be a king to bear. And by the way, I feel like her demand that the only way she can rightfully take the throne is with Aegon's head is completely arbitrary. It's not a guarantee. And also, perhaps you could take the throne without beheading him. Okay, the fact that she is demanding that feels really out of character for her, who has been so reluctant to pull the trigger on nearly anything. She wants to avoid bloodshed, and now suddenly she will demand the beheaded, body, to get the death of a mother's child, and she's telling it to the mother right there. It's like insanity. She wouldn't do that. Maybe if they had a build-up where she was willing to make concession after concession to the point where she's willing to be more bloodthirsty, that she could get there. But they haven't set that up. So this scene feels so out of place for both Rhaenyra and Alicent. It was probably the worst executed scene in the entire season, easily. So it really damages the episode, and then combine that with the payoff, because this is basically the ending, mind you. After this, they have a bit of a build-up to what is a series of scenes that are teasers for Season 3. That we don't get the payoff either. And try to show that all the pieces are in place for a really big battle, which we don't get. We do get some kind of like clues. We find out Otto is in prison somewhere. We don't know by who I think maybe Laris is responsible for it. But then we see, the other armies that people have been preparing on the march to find together. They spent a lot of time with one of Damon's daughters to his first wife, I forget her name, looking for a dragon in the Vale, and she finds the dragon, and it's Sheepstealer, I think. Spent too much time on that. But anyway, yeah, she gets the dragon at the end. And we end up I end up feeling unsatisfied, because then it cuts and that's the end. No payoff. And it follows after a pretty disappointing scene. And it's annoying because so much of everything else in the episode was really good. Disappointing. What can I say? It's disappointing for how good the show is. The episode overall is still orders of magnitude better than most other stuff, like especially anything like Acolyte or anything like that. Most other stuff out on TV at the moment. Still a lot to like in it. I'll probably still fall on maybe a 5, around there. Yeah, I think a 5 out of 10 for this episode. But that's the season 2 in completion now. And overall, I'm probably sitting on a 7 out of 10 for season 2. Not as good as season 1. Season 1 is an 8 out of 10. You could probably push me to a 9 out of 10. Maybe I did give it a 9 out of 10. I love season 1. And season 1 had much bigger, better moments. Emotional moments as well. They had more impact. Viserys walking across the throne room. Best moment in the season. But it also ended with a bang and had some... Yeah, season 1 was pretty standout. Season 2... unfortunately, was not as good, and there were some more disappointing moments. I also think it's a bit more progressive, intentionally so, in certain things, and those moments felt particularly forced. And that scene with Alicent and Rhaenyra felt like a girl boss scene, where they wanted to force it in because these are the powerful women, and they are going to determine the course of the fate of the realm, when really that's not the case for Alicent anymore. She's mostly powerless, and her plan is dumb, and it doesn't make them... better as characters, or the show better. It harmed the show, and it made these characters look worse for it. So ultimately, that is a disappointing conclusion to a pretty good season of television. I'm, of course, still on board. I'm a fan of the show. I'm looking forward to season 3. I just wish season 2 could have ended better, and it could have. I think the writing in it, they have people working on the show that should have been able to do better. I'm not saying everyone who work on the show is so talented, but they certainly have enough talented people working on it that they could have done better, because there's some impressive stuff, impressive writing and characterization, payoffs and all that, and we don't get that. I'm still left to wonder why. Was it the writer's strike? Was it the budget? Because the type of battle that we're expecting, that this is building to, is probably going to cost a bit of money to make. And if they blew all their budget on what they had, okay, I could kind of see why they pushed it off. Doesn't excuse the Alicent Rhaenyra scene, though. That really could have been cut completely, or something put in its place to build up to, what'll happen in season 3, better than what we got. That scene was just bad for a number of reasons, and I'm just like... I'm probably going to rewatch it, because especially on that first viewing, it really felt they were just playing defense for Rhaenyra and trying to build her up and justify her. And she's not justified in many things yet. It's annoying. What do you think, though? Let me know in the comments below. And I appreciate everyone who has joined me on the reviews for House of the Dragon. And because that's what I do here. We stay on watch. But I usually cut there. I'm not going to cut there, because we got things coming out in the future that, of course, we'll be covering here on Night's Watch. Agatha. Oh, that's going to be painful. Rings of Power. It's all coming soon. So I hope to see you there. And as always, stay on watch.